All right, Bang, today is Tuesday. It's July 13th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Chief, we're back. Nice week off. How did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah.
So it was like Americana 4th of July. I responsibly hammered Miller Lights.
Yeah.
And then I went to the Windy City Smokeout over the weekend. And, you know, if you go in the back, like we were like interviewing a lot of the pit masters and stuff. You know what their beer of choice was?
What was it?
Miller Lite.
There you go.
We're talking like real Americans all over the country. All those pit masters love Miller Lite.
You know who was in town this weekend?
Who's that?
Dana Beers.
The one and only.
I had a couple beers with him.
How was that?
Great. Guess what we drank?
Miller Lite?
Miller Lite.
There you go.
Exactly. So obviously festival season's here.
Mm-hmm.
Miller Lite was flowing. You like to share it with friends. So whether it's rocking out at a concert or in, the sanctity of your own home or a dive bar or cocktail, whatever it is, cocktail lounge, whatever you want, Miller Lite's there for you.
Yeah. And it's like nothing goes better with like those smoked meats than that Miller Lite.
Oh, yeah.
You cleanse the palate, crisp it up. So delicious. Like I'm not joking. Like this, I might have set like a personal record over like an 11-day period. I think I might have had a streak where I had one every day.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. But responsibly. So next time you're getting ready to enjoy some cold ones with your crew, go to MillerLite.com/redline to find the delivery options near you. Or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere that they sell beer. It's Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. All right, so today we're going to get into Haiti a little bit.
Yeah. So they were in the news last week because their president was assassinated. And I don't think I've heard of like a presidential political leader being assassinated in a long time. Like that's like I don't know. I feel like that's just in the age of information and heightened security and tracking and all that. That's just not something that happens. And then the more details come out, it's like, holy fuck, like this is quite the story. So I think because it happened over the holiday weekend and it's a place that not a lot of people are familiar with, they don't get a lot of news coverage unless something like that earthquake happened in 2010. I think they put it back on people's radar a little bit. But I was doing research. I think this is the single saddest, worst history of any country of all time that I've come across.
Really?
Yeah. It's really very terrible. So, and it's almost like you have to kind of tell a lot of the history to make what's happening there now kind of crystallize and make sense. So I think, like I always like to, I'm a details guy. I like to start at the beginning of things. So I think we should kind of do that now because this story that's going on right now, it is still unfolding and it's absolutely wild. Like I can't even fathom living there. And there's, there's millions of people there that just are just stuck in this place where there's corruption and really no leadership at all right now. Like the future of Haiti is like in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, we've covered kind of quite a few countries.
Yeah.
We've done Venezuela.
Yep.
We've done Saudi Arabia. Where does it kind of?
I think in terms of like standard of living and turmoil and, just natural disasters and their history, I really do think it's the worst. I think I'd rather be in Venezuela or Saudi Arabia than Haiti.
It's not good.
Not good.
No.
The worst.
Yeah.
The woke country. And it's not like a indictment on the people. They've just had a
tough run.
For 200 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually 600 miles from Miami. It's like tragic that a country that close to us is like ignored completely. Like I don't know dick about Haiti until I started, researching with this, and a million like coups and revolutions and, it's just really, really bad. And it's like, it seems like something that, we've intervened with them a lot, which I never knew, like in bad ways. But it seems like that's a people in a country that needs help desperately right now. And I hope that we or somebody steps up
to help them out. All right. Well, let's kind of get into it. So you want to start like kind of at the beginning?
Yeah. Okay. So it goes, all the way back. It started, as in terms of modern history. I mean, then Christopher Columbus, like quote unquote, discovered it and landed there. So that was like 1493. He claimed it for Spain. It's split, right? So you have Dominican Republic and then you have Haiti. And so Christopher Columbus claimed it for Spain. Spain comes over, like wipes out all the natives, like just kills them all. and then forces them into slave labor to like mine all. There was like a shit ton of gold and silver and stuff. So they like made the native people like mine it out, and they just stripped the land. It like decimated that whole side of Hispaniola is what it was called. The whole island of Dominican Republic plus Haiti is called Hispaniola. So the Haiti side, which is west, got like ripped apart, and then Spain was like, all right, we're done here, and they kind of took off. And France was a little bit later to colonize in the New World, especially that part of the world in like the Caribbean and South America than the British and the Spanish were. So they were like kind of looking for scraps, and they settled in what is now Haiti, and that's when the slave trade started. And their slave trade, you could argue, and their treatment of slaves was probably the worst of, or right up there with the worst of anywhere in the slave trade world. Like the images of and they had more per like square mile or whatever than most of the other places. So there's like a shit ton of slaves, where I think the ratio is like 10 slaves for every master, something like that. And they got to a point now towards the end of the it's like 1794, something like that. They had a slave revolt. So the slaves, because they're like, hey, a lot what was coming from France and from the New World with the slaves was kind of the Enlightenment era, and I guess there were more slaves down there that could read than up here. So they were like, what the fuck? Like, this is inhumane. And they just said enough is enough. And they rose up and they like kind of broke through their chains and like killed all their masters. And then France, when they first started this slave revolt uprising and were taking power, France was going through their own French Revolution, right? So they're like killing the King Louis, and they're having all kinds of chaos there, Robespierre and all those people. And so Haiti was like, breaking free of France. And then Napoleon takes power and comes back. And he was like, hey, like, I'm the big dog here, and starts battling with these Haitian, and they're really, all.
I'm surprised they wouldn't just let it go.
So Haiti actually defeated Napoleon. Okay, so it was good, so far away, and there's so many slaves, and they were like unified back then, and now they're free people, and they're like, and they eventually like win enough battles where France did like a negotiated liberation of Haiti. So they're like, all right, well, you guys win. You're a free country, but you gotta pay for it. Like we're still like, we're colonialists, right? We set up shop here for a reason. It's for sugar, coffee, all these crops and plantations that they had established. So the first government of Haiti signed this deal that basically impoverished them kind of forever. Like they've never really been able to prosper. And it started out way back when, because they were just paying all, like, any resources or money that they would put towards schools and infrastructure and all, bettering their own people, was being sent back to France, because that was the deal that they negotiated. So they just had all, you harvest all this coffee and sugar, and instead of selling it to America or selling it here or there and like being in like a more capitalist society, they basically had to just pay almost like the mafia, right? Like you kick some upstairs, you kick enough upstairs,
a couple points,
right? But it was more than a couple points in this situation. So they just could never really get out from months. Like you're in like really bad credit card debt, kind of.
Yeah, quicksand.
Exactly. Yeah, you could never get out of it. So they had this all through like when they officially got their independence was 1804, and they just kind of struggled the whole time, right? They were just struggling along, different leaders, this and that, different armed conflicts with both Spain at one point, and then Dominican Republic got their freedom, and they had wars with each other. So you have French-speaking Haiti, Spanish-speaking Dominican Republic. There was, battles going back and forth where they had some Haitians where French-speaking freed, former slaves were living in the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic were like, get the fuck out of here. They're like, hey, like, we've actually been here for a long time. Like, no, we're in charge. And they slaughtered all of them. So like, so there's just like all these like brutal fucking wars. And you get up to the point where things are like it's always kind of had some unrest. And we talked about this on another podcast, and now we're fast forwarding to like 1915. Okay. And we talked about this on a World War I podcast, where Germany formed as a country late, and they had that King Wilhelm, and he was like, we got to get in this colonial game. And it was always kind of, they were looking at Puerto Rico, they were looking at Haiti, they were looking at all these different places. And the United States had that thing called the Monroe Doctrine, where it's like, hey, we're not going to mess with your hemisphere, Europe, Africa. We're not going to touch any of that shit. Don't mess with ours. So anytime like Cuba or Puerto Rico or these places, Germany was like sniffing around. They actually had a plan to invade the United States. They were going to land at Cape Cod and try and like kind of put a blockade around Boston and New York City. And that they found that plan stuck in a drawer in like a military archive in like the 1970s, that they had this plan. But then like the gears of war were ramping up for World War I, so they kind of just ditched that plan.
Wow.
But Germany was going to invade the United States, basically just so they could negotiate from a position of strength, so they can get Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti. So they were sniffing around Haiti, like putting in business interests there, like kind of doing the old colonial playbook from the British. We're like, hey, we're going to set up some businesses here, like help you guys out. And then, we're going to bring in some troops to protect our interests. You guys threw a rock at one of our soldiers, so now fuck you, like your whole island is ours.
What a wild time.
Wild time, okay? So this is 1915, or 19, yeah, so this is, Germany was like trying to set up shop there like during World War I now.
It's not even that long ago.
It's not.
No,
it's like 3 people ago, like 3 lifetimes ago, right?
Holy fuck,
you know?
man.
So it's like your grandparents or your great-grandparents were like in their 50s when this is going on.
Crazy.
You know? So, or at least mine were. And so it's not that long ago.
Not at all.
And so World War I's going on, and Germany is trying to like have a foothold, theoretically, potentially a base in the Western Hemisphere, and they're doing that game plan where they're sniffing around Haiti, to the point that the United States was like, we don't like that. The United States invades Haiti in 1915. I never knew that. Did you know that?
Nope.
So they invaded Haiti, and they stayed and occupied Haiti until 1934. They were there for 20 years, almost 20 years. The United States had the Marines in Haiti for 20 years. And I guess they were clamping down on just about everything, and then pull out. And in 1934, World War I happens, and Haiti has this kind of World War II happens. And after World War II, Haiti has this like little period, about 6 or 7 years, from like 47 to 53, something like that, where they're actually doing okay, where they have some tourism, because now like you can have air travel and some cruises, and America's booming. It's only 600 miles from Miami, so you can have this like escape down to like this tropical paradise. And then this guy, Francois Duvalier, comes in 1957 through like basically there was like this ruling class there, I guess, that was, everybody was black because it killed all the white people in the early 1800s. But there was like this ruling class of like mixed, okay? And he was like, those people, they're really just kind of like white people, and they're keeping everybody down. And there was like this very small fraction of people who were making a lot of money, and then everybody else was like a poor farmer. So he kind of rallied the greater population and took control. You know what his nickname was? Papa Doc. So like, remember we talk about 8 Mile all the time? White Sox Dave loves saying, oh, he Papa Doc'd him. Well, the Papa Doc nickname was really from this brutal fucking dictator in Haiti, Papa Doc. And he ran Haiti from 57 to 71. And then his son ran it from 71 to like 86 before he got like exiled. And he spent the rest of his life in France. But he was also like brutal dictator. So
how did he become a verb? Do we know?
I think the movie made it a verb, but that rapper, like the battle rap guy against Eminem,
you're right.
His name was Papa
like
Doc.
Coming out,
Okay. So then the movie made it.
He made it a verb.
But that guy, the Francois Duvalier guy,
that's wild though.
Wild. Okay, the Papa Doc, he was like a for real crazy person. So he was, they have the like Rastafarian kind of religion down there, which is like pretty prevalent, and they smoke a ton of weed, and that's like whatever, right? But they also do voodoo. Okay, so Papa Doc, when Kennedy got shot in '63, he claimed responsibility. He's like, I did that shit. I killed Kennedy. They're like, what are you talking about? He's like, killed him with voodoo. Put a voodoo spell on him. Killed him. Okay, so like that's the kind of guy that Papa Doc was. Like, he's like, he's claimed responsibility for that. And then they had, like I said, his son took over. They exiled that guy, and then they had a democratic election where they elected this guy whose background is basically he's a priest, okay, and his name was Aristide, and he got like the elites didn't like him, the elites in Haiti didn't like him, so he was a victim of like a military coup where they removed him from power. They didn't kill him because it's like, this is a man, he's a priest, he's a man of God, he's not like that big of a threat, and so this was 1991. This guy gets back into power with the help of the United States of America. They bring in 20,000 troops, and it's like the operation was called Operation Reinstating Democracy, something like that. And this guy comes back into power, and then it's one of those places where we talked about this on another podcast where you used to see the commercials where people are starving, this and that. They went on this run, so they always had that. They've always been poor. In 2010, they have that giant earthquake, right? And it was like a 7 point something. And because like they don't have great infrastructure and it's this very mountainous place, 100,000 people died. Over 100,000 people died in an earthquake. When you think about the big ones here, like I think it was 1991 as well, or 89 with the giants. And, we just didn't have as many people killed because we were living in better conditions, kind of for the most part. And so they had that earthquake come through, kill 100,000 people. 2012, they have a cholera outbreak, kills thousands of people. Cholera is like a disease from Oregon Trail, right? Like it's like, that's like, a cholera outbreak in 2012, that's like the level of poverty. If you look at these videos, there's just like trash. Like you think we have litter problems here, they would just have like these rivers that are just filled with plastic and trash and bottles, and they were just living in like garbage they would throw garbage out the window because they didn't have like the infrastructure of like a streets and sanitation department to take it away. So I don't want it in my house, I'll just throw it in the alley. So they just have alleys just filled with trash. And so it's like this really poor, like terrible, like, it's like you can't even believe that people are living like this. It's really sad.
Before we get into part 2 here, I do want to talk about Miller Lite. Obviously, the summer is here. The summer's rocking. You're cracking those cans. You're twisting those bottles. And there's no better way to do it than enjoying a nice ice-cold Miller Lite. So, you just deserve moments like that. You deserve moments where you can enjoy yourself, celebrate, and honestly do it in a sense that's not, over. I don't even know how to say it, but you know what I mean. Like it's just something that's very, very common man and very always there for you fashion, and that's Miller Lite. There's so many options. There's these new cans. They got these skinny cans, and they got all this other crap. But Miller Lite, the original light beer, is always going to be there for you. So definitely go get some Miller Lite. You can find it pretty much anywhere that they sell beer, but next time you're getting ready to enjoy the cold ones with your crew, go to MillerLite.com/redline to find delivery options near you. Or like I said, you could pick up Miller Lite pretty much anywhere that they sell beer. It's Miller time. Get it delivered to you. That's nice. That's a nice feature. If you're in a pinch or you don't want to leave, just go to, like I said, MillerLite.com/redline. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Miller Lite. I'm really stumbling here. Miller Lite, go enjoy your summer. Go enjoy the best light beer this country has to offer. All right, let's hop into part 2.
And then what happens after that? After the cholera outbreak, they have like a series of devastating hurricanes where it's just like, from like every year they're getting walloped by these hurricanes. And so they eventually, so there's so much turmoil, right? Like people are dying. There's infrastructure's bad. They got crime. They got pollution, poverty, everything, that they elect this guy who just got assassinated in 2017, Jovenel Moise, okay? And he was supposed to be, he was a democratically elected guy, right, supposedly. And like right away, people are like, oh, fuck, we made a mistake. Like right away. Starting in 2018, there started to be like these protests, like get this guy out, because he was big time in bed with the cartels from South America and Mexico. Gangs were like he was in bed with them. There was like this fund that goes to like these Caribbean, like for basically the Caribbean countries that were decimated by these natural disasters that he was fleecing, like he was taking for his own personal gain. So people started taking to the streets in 2018 to protest. He's having none of that, right? So he has the police are like shooting tear gas and like observing people and trying to break up the crowds. And then he's like in with the gangs. So he's like, hey, the police said this guy over here, he's the one like rallying these people, kidnapped, murdered. Okay. So he had like his police on his side, and then to like kind of break up the crowds the way that, you know, you'll see like in other places where there's tear gas, like we have that here. You try to dispense the crowds if they're getting unruly. And then he would follow that up, be like, hey, we can't have the police maim and murder and kidnap people, so he'd have his gangs go do it. So the police would observe, they would report, the gangs would go out and
do the dirty work
and do the muscle. So you probably haven't seen this movie, given the history of this show. Gangs in New York.
Yeah, I it's one of those that I've seen, but like it was a long time ago.
So there's this one line with the guy from Tammany Hall. He's got the big red beard, and they're having the election, and he's like, the appearance of the law must be upheld, especially when it's being broken. So he's the one. So he did the same tactic. So he would have the police, and then he would have Bill the Butcher come in and be like, hey, knock some heads so people stop fucking around and they vote the right way. So he was basically taking a page out of Tammany Hall from the book, or the movie rather, Gangs in New York, and using that tactic. And it just kept getting worse and worse to the point that they had, he was supposed to leave office, like his term was up. So he was elected in 2016, took power in 2017. He's supposed to leave in 2020. Just said no. He's like, I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving. Like the other DiCaprio movies. Like, I'm not fucking leaving. I'm in charge. And so he was trying to say like, hey, like we held a special election in 2016 because the other guy was fucked. And so I didn't have my full 4 years. So then he's like, people are like, no, like we have laws. Like your term is over. Like your term is over. You have to leave. And there, again, massive protests all throughout the country. And you can look on YouTube, and like Vice News has covered it. A lot of different publications have covered it. It just never really, as far as I know, got into like the general public consciousness, at least not in front of me. But it looks like the scenes we've seen in Venezuela, where they're just highways are shut down, whole streets are shut down.
Was it India with the farming thing?
Yeah, like, close, okay, but not.
There's so many people.
Yeah, and it was. I would say it was definitely more violent than the Indian ones.
Okay.
But not to the amount of people, because there's just so many. Remember those ones were like 50 miles long,
yeah.
you know. So, but yeah, very, very. You know, the visuals are still stunning, and but they would go through, and you know, the Moise in 2020. Kidnappings because of these protests trying to get him out of office, while there was like a race to get him out of office because he was trying to unilaterally rewrite the Constitution, which would give him another year, and then he was putting another provision where he could stay for 12. Okay, so he like this guy got murdered. That's sad. An assassination. He got murdered. He sounds like he was a very bad guy. Okay, so it's like so kidnappings in 2020 when things were really heating up. They were up 200%, and those are reported kidnappings. And like I said, he was using the gangs, and then 180 people were killed in 2020 just during protests. So like you get run over, you get clubbed, you get shot, you get a rubber bullet to the eye. Like there's a lot of like government killings too, not just the gangs. So it's been a hellacious, literally, like I'm saying that word on purpose. Seems like when you read about it and watch these videos, it looks like hell on earth. And it goes fast forward all the way to this past week where this guy gets assassinated. And it's like, you know, it's really murky to know who did it and who's in charge, because nobody trusts the police. The police have been in bed with him. They, you know, everybody's like, who's on whose side? Who the fuck knows? Okay. And then he had a ton of enemies. And then there's video, like surveillance video of the lead up to his assassination. And do you have that, Harry? So if you can just play that now, I'll tell you when to stop it.
No.
Okay, so do you hear what they're saying? This is a DEA operation. Those are Americans in Haiti yelling at the presidential palace, saying, "Open up! This is a DEA operation." Now, the DEA, like if you've ever seen Narcos, like they're active in foreign countries to bust up the cartels, and and I guess they have had a presence of running missions in Haiti as well. So it wouldn't be like that shocking to hear somebody yell, "This is a DEA operation." Now, the DEA is saying we had nothing to do with this. So the Haitian authorities, they get into like this shootout a few hours later, kind of in a suburb of the capital where the assassination happened, and they capture all these guys. 2 of them were Americans. They're Haitian Americans, right? So there's 20 of the people that they've claimed that they arrested. And again, like you have to think about your sources, because it's like you don't know who to trust. But the Haitian authorities say that of the people that they captured in this operation that killed the president and hurt his wife has been flown to Miami for like treatment because she got shot in this thing too. There's 26 Colombians and 2 Americans. Okay, so it's not like it's a Haiti thing. It's not like it's not the people in the street doing this. It's all, according to Haiti, it's all foreign agents. The other thing that's kind of crazy about this, it's like, is this this is like, we talk about how conspiracy is a bad word. This is by definition a conspiracy. It's 2 or more people coming up with a plan to do something. That's all conspiracy means. It's been given this black mark as a word that's like, oh, like you're a crazy person. But they have conspired, literally by definition, to kill this guy. The interesting thing, he had a lot of guards, right? He's a president of the country. He's got a whole team of guards around him. Not one guard was hurt. Not one guard was shot. Not one guard was hurt. So that makes you think that the guards like maybe opened the door and let them in, and then they kill the president, and then it's like, hey, like they might have been in on it. They might have been told to stand down, but who's in charge? And now there's like this giant power vacuum in Haiti because the president's dead. He had fired the prime minister. Okay, so you have the president, and then below him is the prime minister, and in normal circumstances, the prime minister would just ascend. So the prime minister, who is now, they have 2 guys kind of claiming power officially, because the guy who got fired is still technically the prime minister, because the other guy was supposed to be sworn in next week. So it's like, well, maybe that was part of the deal. Like, why did he get assassinated now? Maybe because the guy who is claiming he's in charge, the former prime minister, wanted to be like, if I'm going to take control, we have to do it now. So legally I have a claim, because the other guy hasn't been sworn in yet. So was he in on it? Who knows? So you have that guy claiming power, the other guy who was supposed to be the prime minister claiming power, and then you have this other guy who is just like the news and everybody and even himself, just like, yeah, I'm a gang leader. I'm in charge of this shit. So now he's trying to, like, this gang leader, he's a former cop. His name is Jimmy Cherizier. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it right. And he's head of the G9, which is a federation of like 9 of the most powerful gangs in Haiti. And he's just got like his army. He's got like a fucking army down there, like running the streets. And he's like a guy, he was like in favor of the old president who got assassinated. So he had a quote saying it was a national and international conspiracy against the Haitian people, police, political opponents, and, quote, the stinking bourgeoisie, meaning like the elites, sacrificed Moise. And then he said, like, he's called for his people to like take over the streets and march and protest in the streets. And he promised that his gang would use, quote, legitimate violence. Now, I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't think anybody does. But he's like, we'll use violence when it's legitimate. Who's to say what's legitimate? Him, I guess. And he also claims that there are business magnates from Syria and Lebanon that really run the country, and they need to give it back to the Haitian people. So now you have like these, other business elements where it's like, who's really pulling the strings? This guy's shown some, cast some doubt on that, like muddy the waters of like who's really the power players in the country. And I was like, Syria and Lebanon? Like you could have given me 50 guesses of where like the quote unquote power player, the foreign power players are from. I would never have guessed Syria and Lebanon. Okay, so that was my ears went up on that one too. And then there's just like the report is like, well, why don't we just like have the police or somebody to kind of control the situation? It's like there's not enough police, and the police that are there are bought and paid for by who knows. So it's just like it is just chaos, and there's just nobody in charge. Jeez. And there's just like I don't know, like there's no end in sight. And then they 17 of those guys who were arrested before, they said that they were recruited. They're Colombians. They said they were recruited to work in Haiti by a company based in Miami called CTU Security. So we have an American company, allegedly, recruiting Colombians who probably work with the cartels to go to Haiti to murder their president. And then CTU, that security company, has not issued a statement or anything about, their involvement or anything, but they haven't denied anything. They're just like they haven't said anything publicly, to my knowledge. That could change by the time this airs, but as of right now, this recording, that there's no statement from them. So that's the gist of it. That's all I got. I mean, it's a lot to take in, but it is a wild fucking story that it just seems like I can't make sense of like who would kill him. I can't make sense of who's going to be in power in the future. And it's like, it seems like there's no way to really resolve this issue.
Wow. You definitely don't want the gang guy taking over.
Probably not.
No.
The quote unquote legitimate violence guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably not.
Yeah.
You probably don't want either of the two guys claiming power, although one of them's a neurosurgeon. I don't know. That makes me think at least he's smart.
Yeah.
But it's
Jeez,
just,
dude.
yeah.
Do you know where Dominican Republic's on with this?
I haven't heard that. Truthfully, I didn't look it up either, but I can't imagine that they're thrilled with, it's not that big. Well, I guess it's a good sized island, but they share it. I bet you that they would be pretty worried about violence and chaos and who knows, another cholera outbreak or something crossing over the border. But I haven't seen anything specifically from them.
What exactly is cholera?
It's like an old disease. I want to say it gives you like very bad diarrhea, like you just like shit your brains out. Profuse watery diarrhea, sometimes described as rice water stools, vomiting, thirst, leg cramps, restlessness or irritability, probably from shitting your brains out and vomiting, being thirsty all the time. And I think we had the worst ways to die draft yesterday. I think I actually drafted it. I think I drafted cholera because that sounds fucking terrible.
Dysentery you did, I thought, right?
Did I do dysentery? I think they're similar. We
recorded that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bacterial disease that's usually spread in water. So
yeah, well, and they have and so diarrhea is dysentery too. Nausea and vomiting. Sounds like they're very similar.
Extremely rare in the U.S. Fewer than 1,000 cases per year.
Right, because this is a modern country with like basic sanitary practices in their water supply that just doesn't happen in Haiti because they have no leadership, they have no money, they have no infrastructure, and it just leads to death and destruction and chaos. And it bothers me that this is so close to us. That it's like they're our fucking neighbor, and it sounds like hell on earth. The only other, I said that they're the worst. The only other one that might be able to compete is Liberia, and maybe we should do one on Liberia at some point too, because that's the west coast of Africa, and it's also like a similar situation.
Yeah. Damn, dude, that sucks. The people living there.
Yeah, it really does. It's a terrible situation, and this thing where they have three guys, basically two guys claiming legitimate power, the gang leader being like, fuck all that, I'm going to be in power, and nobody knows who killed the other guy. Like, is our government involved? Is it just like, mercenaries like from the CTU? Do they who paid them to do that? There's a lot to shake out here, and it's wild.
Yeah. All right, then. I just saw some breaking news and some other topics. I don't know if you saw that.
Duncan Keith has been traded.
Yeah, so I assume your brain is all over the place right now.
I tried my best to stay focused. I saw it about 5 minutes ago.
Did you? Okay,
yeah.
Well, you did a great job because I didn't stay focused, and I could imagine because you got a lot of other stuff to do.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe we'll pick it up somewhere soon. I mean, now the stuff with Cuba going on, I never realized it's kind of pretty interesting area over there with all these islands.
You know, it really makes you, at least me, appreciate how fragile like our country is, and like that veil of like democracy and freedom, and like I feel like we take so many things for granted, like clean running water.
Yeah.
You know, like we have it so good here. We got to fix some things, but like we're so blessed and lucky to be born in the United States as opposed to one of these places. And yeah, it's definitely, you know, it seems like the UN or somebody's got to
step in and help Haiti.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. Well,
We'll
be looking out. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, everybody, for listening. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.